Okay. I'm just gonna get a little drink of water.
Me, just start.
Hi and welcome to Manufacturing Matters by Factbird, the podcast where we talk about all matters manufacturing. And today I'll be talking to Sterre again. Hi, Sterre.
Hi, Michael.
It's good to see you in
To see you too.
in the hot seat again. Sterre's the account manager for BeNeLux at Factbird, and she has quite a lot of experience working in manufacturing, working with customers in manufacturing, and also the family business. So it's like a long history of manufacturing.
Definitely.
Okay, and I thought today maybe you could introduce our topic.
Yeah, so we'll be talking about condition monitoring today. And last time we talked about what happens at the end of the line, the packaging area. And now we'll talk about everything that happens before that on the way to the products going to the consumers.
Awesome, yeah. So last time it was about sustainable packaging. Today it's about condition monitoring.
Yeah.
Mainly at the start of the line. That was a nice little nugget of information that you gave me already. So what is condition monitoring, just to kick things off?
Well, condition monitoring is basically like looking at the process and making sure that the product in the current state is like maintained well. So it can do temperature, it can be humidity, anything really that has to make sure that the product that we're making is in the right quality and the right state.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily the machinery, it's mostly like how we look at the product in that moment on the line.
Yeah, so there'd be like some band of quality, some upper limit, lower limits, and then whatever.
Yeah. It's very much about the upstream production. So it has a lot to do with like liquids and powders and everything until like the final product has been made.
Yeah, exactly. And then it gets packaged.
And then it gets packaged.
Maybe podcast number 3, I want to say. It doesn't matter. You'll find it on Spotify.
Yeah.
So I've heard a lot of talk about condition monitoring recently, and that's why it's a good topic to talk about as well, because maybe there's some slightly different takes on it or whatever, but why is condition monitoring so important right now?
Well, to go back to the whole sustainability aspect, right?
Yeah.
Like it reduces a lot of waste. So making sure that, let's take temperature, you know that your product is within spec and within the right parameters. You know, like, okay, those bagels or breads are going to turn out good, right? And if you don't measure that, it could be too high or too low, and you could throw away an entire batch of products.
Yeah, which was quite common, right, in the food and beverage industry.
I mean, yeah, it happens a lot, and it still does, because food is a tricky thing to work with. But so reducing the waste is definitely something. We can also track a bit of the machinery. So if we take vibrations, if it vibrates too much, it could be that the machine is breaking down, or that we can predict, like, okay, every time we run this specific product or do this specific process, it's not going very well.
Yeah, and there's different ways to set those parameters, right? So you can have like a very experienced operator or technician that can say where it should be, or maybe in the future there'll be some sort of AI helping, or
exactly,
whatever. But yeah, just collecting that data. So quality control, waste reduction.
Yeah, the quality control is really important in terms of like, well, let's take temperature again. Like if it needs to be at this specific temperature to be a successful product, then the quality control will happen there. So you also see often that a lot of quality checks are being done on the way from machine to machine when something goes from dough to oven or anything in that process. And then we will do quality checks on every step on the way to the final packaging area.
Yeah.
So that's definitely something as well. And it will optimize all the processes, right? So because we do those quality controls, because we reduce the waste, all the processes will optimize. And, there will be continuous improvement, which is what we want at the end of the day.
Yeah, doing more with less, or using less resources to make the same amount of stuff at least.
Yeah, and it's good for the profit.
Exactly.
Reduces the costs.
Yeah. So cost control is another important reason for condition monitoring. I think people always say it like, oh, it's getting more and more competitive, but definitely post 2020, I've heard that things have got a lot more competitive again in manufacturing. So
yeah, the margins are getting lower. It's more difficult to gather the raw materials for the products that they're making. So it's definitely really important to use the raw materials that you have and keep the process as optimized as possible, so that you can keep the costs low and not throw that much away. And I guess the sustainability aspect of it all is very important for mostly the consumers who care about the quality and where their product is made and comes from.
Yeah, so it's a very important cog in so many parts. There's also another one, I guess, is supply chain management became a lot harder. So if you can be more efficient with the amount of resources you use, then you're maybe less likely to be hit by supply chain problems.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, so energy efficiency, waste reduction, quality control, process optimization, predictive maintenance, and all those things. So condition monitoring comes into all of that. So you said it at the beginning, many companies, like from our experience and competitors' experience and all that, many excel at collecting data at the end of the line, but it's often a struggle at the beginning of the line, right? I think you said. So, and that's often where condition monitoring comes in, as you said. So why is that?
Well, I think at the end of the line, it's very easy to count the products, right? You can count the amount of packages coming out, the pallets going to the customers or into the truck. But before that, when a product is a powder or a liquid and gets shaped and all the upstream production, basically, it's way harder to determine, like, okay, we know approximately how much went into the machine. We don't really know what we lost on the way. So it's a lot more difficult. And when product is thrown out as well, because maybe the parameters were not good, it's very hard to keep track of that. Yeah. So the condition monitoring is really helping, like setting alarms and making sure that early on you can already see, okay, this might go wrong, or we can see from past data that this is not going to work out. Yeah. So you can really act on it in the moment. So I think it's harder to measure, but I think the condition monitoring and really utilizing that in the factory is definitely going to make that problem less, but not a lot of manufacturers do it yet.
It's 2024, and I'm relatively new to the manufacturing industry. I come from another place in IoT, and I'm surprised at how much people don't know about their production in these factories. But yeah, that's why Factbird's successful, and how we help people is we help bring visibility in that, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think the whole 4.0 manufacturing state that we're all in now is important for that. But I mean, you have a lot of old machines, you have a lot of new machines. Like, it's very hard as well to be like, okay, certain machines already give me the temperature, other ones I have to do it. How am I gonna collect this all in one place and dashboard it and stuff like that? And the type of materials they work with, right?
Yeah, that's a good point that you bring up. Maybe we could jump ahead to that, because some factories are still working with post World War II machines, and some of them have new machines, or they've normally got a mix, right? So how do people actually collect this condition monitoring data?
Well, often it's done quite manually, like a lot of quality control checks are just written down, and they look at the alarms going off, and then someone puts that in a beautiful Excel sheet or anything like that, and makes a nice dashboard out of it, right? So I mean, we're trying to collect that all together with a bit more plug and play solution. But generally, it's quite hard to go, okay, this new machine does everything, the old machine doesn't. How are we going to combine all of that?
Yeah, so with the new machine, it's you can plug in an Ethernet cable or connect it to the internet somehow, and then you got your data. And then the other option is retrofitting using maybe a Factbird Duo at the back there.
Yeah.
It's a little ad for Factbird.
A little ad for Factbird.
I'm sorry about that. So you got old machines, new machines. Are there any other difficulties with the installation of condition monitoring?
I mean, it depends on what product you work with, right? Yeah. I have some experience with ice cream factories where they do really need to measure the temperature and the flow and
happiest
stuff
place on earth.
It is the happiest place.
Is it?
Yeah.
Okay, nice. I haven't been to an ice cream factory yet, but
it's really nice. Yeah. It was great walking around with a little ice cream in my hand. It's great, yeah. No, but it's a challenge for them, right? Because it's a frozen product. It might damage the sensors. You need to place it really well. Old machines are not built for that. They don't have a setup put your sensor here, right? So
people weren't planning for that when they made it.
No, definitely not. So the material of the product is also a big challenge in this whole process of condition monitoring.
But there's different grades of sensors in that, right?
Yeah, definitely. There's different types and different strengths and yeah.
Which brings me to the next question is, we talked about what condition monitoring is, and a little bit about how you do it, how to install it. So then I was wondering, what kinds of things do people measure when they're doing condition monitoring, just as some examples? What do you often find when you're out in the field?
I mean, we most often find the temperature. That's a lot in F&B, right? Almost every product needs to be made at a certain temperature. So that's a really important one. So then think of bakeries. Yeah. Another one is the vibration analysis. So if stuff is shaking too much, it might be that the product breaks or anything, but it's also used to divide dough or anything evenly. So there's like a tricky aspect there to get it right. Flow meters are also a big one. We have one good example here at Factbird with a butter company, where it's really like, okay, we need the oils and stuff right and a certain liquids, and they really keep track of what goes through the pipes.
Yeah.
So they know exactly which bit and how much they can put in the final product.
Yeah. So they need to know it has a certain amount of oil, a certain amount of whatever.
Yeah, serum and oil, and they need to know how much goes through the pipes and how fast it goes, right?
Yeah.
So that they can make the right mix.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's another one. And then, of course, I think one of the most popular ones at the moment is like energy monitoring. Knowing whether it's more efficient to keep the machine on or in standby mode, but also tracking if like there's big spikes in a machine maybe overheating or the speed being put too fast or too slow by the operators.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways in which you can use the data, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and you just got to start collecting it and using it. And also the advantage is, I guess, if you're collecting it now, even if you're collecting too much, then in the future you'll be able to use that data for some sort of performance enhancement.
Definitely. And they use it for like their cost as well, to know how much costs they have running the machine and how much it uses. And
yeah, just that visibility.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really cool. Yeah. So next question is then, what are some common challenges that people have when integrating condition monitoring into their manufacturing operations?
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of the times, like we talked about it a little bit with like the older and newer machines, right?
Yeah.
It can be really siloed, the data. It can be a bit everywhere, and it can be hard to grasp, like, how are we gonna collect that and put it all together?
Yeah, so it could take the plant manager or whoever a long time to actually figure out how the day went.
Exactly. Yeah, definitely. And I mean, then there's the continuous change, right? Like machines change, they break down. You have to do it again. You have to figure out again, how do we measure it on this machine?
Yeah, new product mixes as well.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And it can be hard for the employees to be trained in that. Like a lot of people in the factory just like come to work to make the product right and are passionate about that. And all the data collection around is still scary, what we see most of the time.
Yeah, 100%.
When we're on the floor. So that's definitely a challenge.
Yeah, so upskilling and training in that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've heard that so many times in the case studies that Gabriel's gone out and shot around the world and different things, listening to those interviews. A lot of it's like you got to take your time to help the operators and technicians and everybody realize it's a tool to help them and help them find a good way to use it and all that.
Yeah, definitely.
And if you skip that step, then the whole thing falls apart.
Yeah, the whole thing falls apart, and so does the production planning, right? It all comes together to, also create a higher OEE at the end. So, yeah.
Oh yeah. And then that leads into the last question I have for you today, I think, is then how do you measure the success of condition monitoring?
I mean, I think that the quality control of it, so seeing that your products are going to have better quality or more steady and stable quality.
And by quality, you mean like the scrap rate's gone down or the...
Yeah, the scrap rate's going down, but also like that the actual product is in spec, so that we know like, okay, this is how the bread should look and should feel and taste and whatever. And that's all done right with all the steps before where we monitored the flows and the temperatures and everything.
So less customer complaints, that could be a KPI.
Yeah, and a more steady like production so that machines are running more often, you throw less out, operators have a better time working.
Yeah, that consistency is so important.
Yeah, the consistency is super important, and that's all part of continuous improvement, right? And you see that continuous improvement managers are really popular right now, like you see it everywhere, process engineers. So that whole bit, that condition monitoring is something they really look at. And it saves costs, right? Like throwing away less. We touched upon it a little bit before, but the profit margins go up, and F&B has the lowest profit margins, the food and bev industry. So for them it's mostly important that all of those steps are monitored the right way.
Yeah, and it's so easy for things to go wrong when making food, which I have great experience with throughout life, but not at scale. Well, thank you so much for your time, Sterre.
You're welcome.
I'm looking forward to the next podcast chat. We've done the end of line and the beginning of line. So
what's next?
What's next? And you'll find out on a future episode of Manufacturing Matters. Thanks for joining. I'm not going to ask Gabriel to turn the camera off today.
Cool.
I've made a decision. Manufacturing Matters
by Factbird.
Nobody's going to listen right to the end.